Hello, everyone. Hope you're doing well. Apologies, massive apologies for being away for so long, so many weeks. Just had a lot of things going on in life currently. One of the good things, however, that happened in the past few weeks is I have been watching some amazing stuff. I think the highlight of these past few weeks has to be the Bear season 2. If you haven't watched it, please watch it. It's one of the best shows of the year so far. Uh, if you think that Succession was the end of shows about generational trauma, uh, then you haven't seen the Bear yet, because it de- it deals with everything around it. Of how, how the phrase, how they say that good art emerges from massive pain, like that. So this show is a lot about that. It's about these bunch of chefs wanting to build a restaurant, and they are doing okay, but they are complete mental wreck, in the sense that they are, sometimes they are good to each other, but they're also very horrible to each other. Like, talk about toxic work culture. This the show has everything. And uh, if you're watching it, please please don't watch it when you're hungry. Please have something by the side to eat, because every episode they're trying to cook something. In fact, every episode is named after a certain dish, like maybe beef, omelette, anything. And that dish for that episode is a very significant part of it. So yeah, like as they say, like, good food also evokes strong emotion. So I think that's this show in a nutshell. So that's an extra recommendation from my side. The movie that I'm actually going to recommend a great movie today. It's somewhat similar to The Bear, but also very different, in the sense that it's similar in the sense that it also evokes strong emotions inside you, and it's different because it's completely different. Like, this movie is a psychological thriller, and Bear is nothing like that. Bear is something that can feel like a warm hug a lot of times. It gives you stress also, but a lot of times it is about relationships and all those things. So yeah, this movie is not in no way similar to The Bear. uh Talking about psychological thrillers, like, I think it is one of the most famous genres on Netflix, right? Like, just think about the number of times you've gone to Netflix and just scrolling past so many crime thrillers, psychological thrillers, even true crime, and something that you cannot decide, and then you end up watching a favorite sitcom for the 20th time, right? Like, this is something that happens to every one of us. Like, and I think it is because there are there's so much content in this crime thriller genre. Like, a lot of them are good, but a lot of them are also bad, right? So that's what I'm going to do today. Like, the reason why I'm recommending this movie is because this movie needs to be recognized a lot more. And if you've watched Clenches, if you've watched our channel before, you know that we recommend only the superlatives. So crime thrillers is something that we're also very passionate about, but we also like to talk about stuff that is very different, very different from the usual fare. Like, I think the best crime thrillers in the past few years, something like True Detective or Sharp Objects or Mayor of Easttown. Like, these, imagine, like, True Detective came out almost 10 years ago. Sharp Objects has been out for like what, 6 years ago, six years now, right? And it's still so much talked about. And I think it's because it's not just about the crime; it's also about the characters involved in it, and uh, it sheds a light on everything. The details and everything are so much in these shows, in these movies, is that it stays with you for a lot. And that's what today's recommendation is also about. So the movie that I'm going to talk about today is called Cure. It was directed by Kiyoshi Kurosawa. I think that's his name. He's not related to Akira Kurosawa. This movie came out in 1997, and if you're familiar with Japanese cinema during that time, there have been a lot of horror movies that were released at that time, which are considered one of the best horror movies of all time, like worldwide. I think during that time, there's this genre that emerged, and it was called the J horror. Uh, and there were three movies specifically that got a lot of recognition. One was a Ring, then there was Grudge, and then there was Cure. There were a lot of others like Battle Royale. If you've seen, it's the movie has like it gave rise to the Battle Royale genre, where a bunch of school kids are thrown in an area where they have to, in order to get out, they have to kill each other and emerge as a winner or whatever. So yeah, there were a lot of horror movies that came out during that time, like mid 90s, late 90s. And these three, Grudge, Ring, and Cure, were, I think, the three most prominent horror movies of that time. Uh, the Ring and Grudge were remade in America. I don't know if Cure has been also remade. I think the reason why it's not as popular as the other two is because because it's not in the supernatural genre. It is a horror movie, but it's not a ghost story such. So, and also I don't think it's as massy as the other two. Right? So, okay, it is a horror movie, but the reason why I think that it's not as massy as the other two or any other horror movie for that matter is because it does not follow the traditional horror tropes. Like, okay, so this is what I consider three traditional, like main traditional tropes of horror. One, there's jump scares. Second, there's anticipation, and the third is about the soundtrack. Cure does not have any of it. It does not have a soundtrack. It has a background score, but it is not, the soundtrack is not used to scare you as such. So the soundtrack's not something that it relies on to scare you. The anticipation, it's not there. Like when I say anticipation, I mean like, those horror movies, so many times we see like a person walking down the hallway and we know something's going to come out and we are anticipating like something's going to come out in front of them or from the back or something like that, right? And when it happens, like the anticipation itself scares you. Okay, this movie does not have that. Cure does not rely on anticipation in the sense that you know what horrifying things you're going to see every time. It's like before it happens. If you think that a person is going to kill someone, that happens, and you know how they're going to do it. But when it happens, it actually scares you, and that I think is one of the best things about this movie is that it does not rely on soundtrack or jump scares. Like horror movies rely so much on jump scares, right? Like, I don't know. Tell me one horror movie. Please tell me if there is a horror movie which does not have jump scares. So Cure, I would not call it a horror, like a traditional horror movie. A, because it's not supernatural, but B, also because it doesn't rely on cheap tactics as such. So yeah, this movie, I think the reason why it's not talked about as much is because, like right now, it has become a proper modern masterpiece. It's taught in film schools. You can find so many essays on the internet just talking about the filmmaking technique and all that. But when it came out, I don't think it was as much revered as the other horror movies. But let me tell you this: when you watch it immediately, by the way. Uh, as of the upload date of this video, you can watch it on YouTube with subtitles. You can easily watch it. It's there for free. Uh, I don't know about the future, but right now you can watch it. Now, trust me when I say this, it's one, like the scenes in this movie are some of the most horrifying things that you see. But where the movie scores for me is that these scenes are not shown just for exploitative purposes. Like there are movies that, will show the kill happening, and then the camera will linger on the thing for a lot of time. But this movie does not do that. It will show you the crime happening, it will show you the kill, it'll show you how the person does it, but it just goes on to something else. It's not a gory movie as such. Uh and the reason why I think it's doing that is because this movie Cure does not rely on, like I said, it does not rely on shock value. The only thing that it wants to convey is what the character is thinking about at that point, what the character who gets influenced by the killer is thinking about at that point, what the killer uh, is thinking about when he's hypnotizing these people, what the detective is thinking about when he's looking at this gruesome thing, the crime that has happened. Every time when we see a horrifying thing, a very something that is something that is out of the ordinary, gory or non-gory, uh, the first thing that comes to your mind is what the character, the so say for example, when the detective goes to the crime scene and when we see the crime, whatever that has happened on the scene, it is shown for a split second and then it switches immediately back to the detective just for us to know what he's thinking about it. And that is something where this movie scores so much more, because it never loses grip on what it's trying to convey. The characters in this movie is the movie's topmost priority. And that I think is so much commendable. Like imagine like having such a great thriller in your hand. Like the story is amazing. I'll get to the basic plot in some time. But imagine like having such a great material to talk about, and then wanting to exploit not wanting to exploit the horrifying things that happen in the movie. The director, I think, just goes out of the way to tell you that all in all, when you see the movie as a whole, the movie is a character piece on not just one or two characters, but everyone that's involved in the movie. The detective's friend, every single victim that the killer hypnotizes, and the way he does it, every time it shocks you. But again, it's only done to make you feel a certain way about the characters. And that is what I think, that is the reason why I think this movie scares you so much more than the usual horror fare. Like if you watch a horror scene in a normal horror movie, you think about that specific scene. But imagine this, like when you see the horror scene in this movie, you not only think about the scene that is happening, you also think about what the character is going through, and what the character that you have known for so much time is going through at that point. That elevates the movie, I think, to a whole new level. And that's what is one of the, I think that's the biggest thing that Cure does well. So the basic plot of the movie is that it's is the usual uh, serial killer thing, but here the serial killer is actually a hypnotist, in the sense that I think he's a medical student, and he knows how to control minds. He knows how to use props uh, to control his victims, and he is never the one who's actually doing the crime. He actually manipulates. He actually goes inside the victims' minds and he hypnotizes them to kill other people, like be it random people, be it their own loved ones. And trust me, guys, the way, like, the scenes where the kill happens and everything, those are gruesome in its own way. But the way he hypnotizes people is, I think for me, I thought, I think those scenes, the hypnotizing scenes, the the way he controls them, I think those are for me scarier than the actual deed that happens. It is. I'll get to the way he does his first hypnotizing. Now, I don't know about the technical parts of it. Like, if you go on the internet, you'll find so many essays, video essays, so many uh, articles written about the way Cure has been shot, the way camera placements are made, the way it focuses on characters, the way it uses silences and all that. I'll get to the silence part of it when I'm explaining the hypnotizing scenes. But you'll find a lot of those things which I don't think I'll be talking about so much, because I don't think uh, I'm the right person to do that, because I've never been on a film set. I've never seen camera or the placements of what like the way things are written, the way shots are made. The only thing that I know is when I was watching this movie, I was terrified the whole time, especially the hypnotizing scene. Scared in a way that I thought I was so into that movie. Like, I saw it on TV. I saw it in my fairly okay screen size TV with lights on. And trust me, guys, I did not think of anything that is around me when I was watching those scenes. Like, I forgot that I was in the real world. I I thought I was in that. I was actually noticing this person hypnotizing, this person controlling this other person. I was so much into it that I was scared, in the sense that when he was hypnotizing those people, in a way you can say that he hypnotizes the viewer as well. The way the director uses silences in this is is so brilliant, and I think that's the reason why this movie does not have soundtracks for the scares that happen in the movie. And I think that was very much needed. Silence was very much needed here, and that is because when you're controlling someone else's mind, you don't need distraction. And that's the reason why this movie uses silence so well. So yeah, when I was watching those scenes, the reason why I was terrified is every 10 minutes or so, I was amazed as to how much I was into the movie when I was watching. I did not notice anything that was happening now. Like, any distractions, anything was just lost on me. Uh yeah. So like I said, I don't know about how the camera was placed, or how many times wide angle was used, or how many times close up was used, or anything like that. All I know that I was engrossed the whole time in those scenes, in the whole movie, but specifically in those scenes. I wanted to know how this guy controls people. Uh the next thing that I want to talk about is the villain of this movie. His name is Mamiya, I think. Yeah. One thing that I don't understand after watching this movie, one thing that I want to understand is why is Mamiya not talked about when we talk about the greatest films of all time? Okay, I want to ask you this: what do you think makes a great villain? Like, they have to want chaos, like, but that's like every villain, right? But they have to be a great match for a protagonist, right? And also, they should only want chaos for the world. They should not. So one reason why I think, from the Dark Knight trilogy, one reason why I think the Joker is a better villain than Bane is that, apart from like the awesome acting that Ledger did, But I think like the reason why Joker is better than Bane is that Bane has a plan. Like we know why he's doing this. Like he wants to take over the world. He wants. He has his own agenda. Like he wants his own people. He wants people to be free. It's a flawed system. It is a very horrible thing that he's doing, but we know why he's doing that. But when it comes to Joker, he does not have any plan. He only, as Alfred says, he only wants to see the world burn. And that is terrifying, right? That is scary to me. Like whatever Joker does, that is scary for you, not just because he is a great nemesis for our protagonist, but he's also crazy, he's mad, and he knows, but he still knows what he wants to do. And that's what scares us. Mamiya in Cure is exactly that. When you see him do his stuff, when you see him hypnotize people, the way he does that is so scary, because he does that in this he does that with the straightest face possible. In the sense that when he's doing that, you get a sense that he knows what he's doing. Like when he's hypnotizing people, you know that he's done something like this hundreds of times. He's done that. He's he's mind controlled people a lot of times in the past. But he also does that in the sense that he does not take pride in it. He does that in a very selfless way possible. Like he does not have any agenda also. He does that because just for the sake of it. He does not he only wants the world to burn. He only wants these people to die in the most gruesome way possible. And that's what scares you about Mamiya. Okay, so I want to talk about the first ever kill that he does. Actually, first kill that we see. He's done a lot of kills before that they are investigating. Uh, the first ever kill that we see him doing is on he's walking on the beach. His first victim is actually sitting on the sand, and I don't know what he's doing, but he sees Mamiya come. And when you see him for the first time, again, like I told you, he looks like the most insignificant person on the beach. Uh, and he does that, I think, because he himself doesn't think of himself as someone so important. Like I think, like I told you, he does not have any plan as such. He doesn't even care if he gets caught or anything like that. He only does that. He only does these things because he likes to. Like I don't think they have delved into the reasons why he's doing it. That is something for us to interpret as to what might have gone, what might have happened to him for him to choose to do something like this. It's like Voldemort choosing to study what Horcruxes. Sorry, Potter here. So I have to. Everything that I do in my daily life has to be related to something that happens in the visiting world. Sorry for that, but yeah, coming to Mamiya. Okay, so the victim notices that he's coming from a distance, and he notices that he's lost. So like any normal human being too, he asks where he's from or what's his name. Now the first thing that you notice in the scene is that Mamiya does not give out any information about himself. He appears to be lost, or maybe he is in real life. Maybe he doesn't know. Like I said, like it's he does these things looking so uninterested. Like it makes you feel like he almost does not want to do it at all. So when the victim is asking him questions like, where are you from, or where do you think you are right now, or what's your name, he does not respond in any way. And this is his first trick. This is the first time you understand how this guy is doing these things. And that is that he's not talking about himself. He only is interested in the person that he's talking to. And that's how he starts his controlling process. He has props in which he controls them, he controls their minds. But he also does that, he also makes them feel that they are more significant than him. I don't know how hypnotism is actually done, but I know this much that uh, you talk about things that the victim, is much more interested in. So when the victim takes Mamia to his home, he looks at the victim's wife first. So he knows that they share some kind of relationship, doesn't know whether they are, you know, how they're related to each other, but he knows that she does mean something to him. Uh, so he starts talking about her, and that's how he controls that. That's how he starts his process about not talking about him at all, about using the silences. He knows the things that he wants to say. He knows how he wants to say it, how he takes pauses before he talks about the next thing. He knows every single thing about it. And this is what I'm talking about when I said that when these scenes actually take place, you actually are thinking about how the victim is actually going to come under his control. And these are some of the most enthralling, some of the most, I think, it will not make you think about anything else in your life that's going on in that point. This is the strength of these scenes. It will not, you will forget, at least I was, you will forget. I forgot where I was when I was watching. And like I said, I watched it on a normal sized television with lights on. I did not, I could not, I was totally into it. I wanted to know how he's going to control. The things that happen after that are, yes, they are very, very gruesome. Things that the victim does to his wife, they are very gruesome. But the scenes after that, when you see him coming out of that hypnotic phase, you see him being so shattered. Obviously, anyone would be, right? But this is what baffles the detectives, that how can a person do that? And it's talked about also in the movie. The detective asks his friend, uh, I think he's a psychologist or something like that, psychiatrist or something of that sort. He asks whether you can manipulate someone to a certain, kill their own in this matter. And the friend says, no, this sort of thing is not possible. You cannot manipulate, you cannot make someone kill another human being. So something like this, even if you catch the killer, it's very difficult for you to actually prove that he's actually mind controlled them. And these are the things that scare you when you're watching these things. And yeah, so the coming back to the first scene, like the way he does that, first of all, is him making the victim feel that he's much more important than himself. The second is the props that he uses. I think he smokes a cigarette in front of the victim. And when the victim looks at the cigarette burning and the sound of the cigarette burning, that is what gets him under his influence. And that is what, when he sees that he's actually paying attention to the cigarette burning and the sound of the cigarette burning, he knows that he's under control. And that's when he starts asking him questions about it. And these are, like I said, very scary scenes, because you know what's going to happen to this guy, because you've seen bad things to other victims that have happened. So this is why I think Mamiya is one of the most terrifying villains of all time. Be it Hannibal Lecter, Joker, I think he's right up there. There, I've said it. You have to watch the movie to know why I'm telling you this. This is not, I don't think this is recency bias. Like, even though I've seen this in the last 3 weeks, and it definitely is recency bias, but I think the reason why I think that that it's also not recency bias is because I'm thinking about the movie as a whole, and the movie works in every single way. Everything that it tries to do, it achieves. Now, the last thing that I want to talk about this movie is proper spoiler. So anyone who's not watched it, please go and watch the movie and then come back. So whoever's going away right now, just prepare to get your mind blown. It's nothing that you've seen before. It's right up there with the best crime thrillers of all time. I can't believe that I waited for so many years for watching this. I saw this movie for the first time in the last 3 weeks, and I'm still very much in awe of it. Come back after you watch the movie, because the spoiler that I'm talking about is, again, one of the most significant things in the movie. I'm going to talk about the detective part of it, but I cannot talk about his character without talking about what happens to him in the end, or what things that he goes through throughout the movie. Uh, so that's why I don't want to half-heartedly talk about his character. That's why. So go enjoy the movie, prepare, just get ready to have your mind blown, and come back and watch the spoiler section. Okay, all right. I want to talk about the detective now. Uh, Now, detective, when we meet him, he is completely baffled because of so many kills that have happened, which are of a similar nature, in the sense that the pseudo killers, after they kill the victims, they act as if they repent about the whole thing, and he knows that since it's of a similar nature, he knows that somebody is manipulating them, right? So, but there's also a conflict that about when his friend tells him that you cannot make people kill other people unless they actually want to do it. So that's a conflict, because, say for example, the first kill that we see in the movie, the husband does that to his wife, and they actually share a very sweet relationship. So it's not possible that he actually wanted to kill her. Only Mamiya could do it. So he's not understanding as to how he can crack this case. And on top of this, like, apart from this case just completely consuming him, people are dropping dead, people are killing other people just like that. You actually see a cop kill his fellow friend, and these things are happening. So this case is completely consuming him. And on top of that, he also is having a lot of personal issues, in the sense that his wife is actually having some mental issues. Like, the first ever scene in this movie is actually not related to anything that I've talked about. It's not related to anything related. It's not related to the case at all. In fact, the first thing that we see in the movie is his wife talking to her psychiatrist about her health, basically, about herself. She has suicidal tendencies, and that is what is going wrong in his personal life as well. So, okay, now I want to talk about, so what happens is, towards, like, in the middle of the movie, uh, they catch Mamiya, they hold him in some lockup or something, like somewhere where he cannot meet other people, and the detective is trying to somehow break him. Now, get this picture. We as viewers, when Mamiya gets caught, we know everything about Mamiya, or like what what he's capable of doing. We know how easily he manipulates people, how easily he controls their minds. So when we see these scenes about the detective, or of the detectives talking to Mamiya, we are so scared for them, or a protagonist for that matter. We are scared for him every time Mamiya is talking to him. We know that I don't think, like, we know that in no way he is going to be able to crack him. Instead, Mamiya is going to get into his head and do stuff. He's going to make him kill other people. But this happens, the meetings happen, like we see 2 or 3 times where he's talked to Mamiya, and nothing of that sort happens. But there are a couple of instances where we get to know that Mamiya he's actually got into the detective's head. One of them I'm going to talk about is one of my favorite, it could be my favorite scene in the movie, is where, okay, this is what happens. He goes home, we go to, and I wish I could show this to you. I wish I could use videos, but we haven't yet figured out how to use videos. We haven't figured out the whole copyright issue thing. So if any of you know how this is done, please let us know in the comments below. We really want to, especially in scenes like these, we really want video assists. We really want to use video clips for this. Anyways, so please let us know about it. Anyway, so I think it's a tracking shot where we see the detective return home, and we see him enter the kitchen. And when he enters, we see his wife has killed herself by hanging from the ceiling. And the scene immediately switches to the detective, and he kneels down. And what he does is he gives out a silent scream. He's not crying, he's just screaming, but no sound is coming out. And this is what I mean about using silences in this scene. He does that. He's kneeling down. Now get this image. His wife has just killed herself from the ceiling, and he's maybe like 3-4 feet away from her. He's kneeling down. No voice is coming out. He is trying to scream, but nothing's happening. And then immediately in the next shot, scene cuts, and we see his wife sitting on the table, and he is standing right in front of the kitchen. So we get to know that he was actually imagining. And this is the first time he notices that Mamiya is actually getting into his head. And it's such a great scene. Remember, I told you how silence is used in this movie. This is the kind of scare that I was talking about. It is such a scary scene. You are appalled. You are furious when this happens. Like something that you did not expect would happen, and this happens, and the scene does not use any sound whatsoever. It's actually, if you think about it, it's actually a clue for you that it's not real. He is trying to scream, but there's no voice that's coming out. So it's something that you get to know. You get a clue that this is something that's actually going on in his head. And Mamiya has finally fucked with his head. And yeah, like I said, it's one of the most terrifying scenes. It's one of the most talked about scenes in the movie. I can't tell you how great this scene is. If you are still here in the spoiler section, and if you haven't watched the movie, I guarantee you, even after I've talked about the scene, you are still gonna watch the scene with your mouth wide open. Because when you watch this movie for the second time, I've seen it twice in the past few weeks. My second time, it just elevates the experience for me. you see this movie in a completely different perspective, because you already know what's going to happen to these characters, but you see this movie with a very, very, very different perspective, as compared to what you saw, how you saw it for the first time. So yeah, this scene is where you find out that Mamiya has actually got into his head. And cut to the last scene. This is the last thing that I want to talk about. This movie is the last shot, is what I want. I call it Mamiya's plan, the last shot. So what happens is, uh, the detective kills Mamiya, and he doesn't struggle or anything. He doesn't fight for it. He knows that it's coming for him. He knows the bad things that he has done. So he accepts his fate, and the detective shoots him. After killing Mamiya, he goes into a diner and he's eating something, and he's also smoking. There's a waitress that comes in front of him. She collects his plate and she goes off. So what happens is, she goes away and the camera stays on the detective's table, but it's tracking her. It's tracking whatever that she's doing. She goes to other tables, and at one point she escapes the frame. But when she comes back, we see a knife that she's holding in her hand, and that is when the screen cuts to black, and this is how the movie ends. Now, this is my interpretation of it. Is the scene when we see the detective for the last time in the movie, he's actually smoking. And I think what Mamiya was trying to do is that he knew at some point that after he gets caught, he knew that he's going to get killed at some point, right? So my interpretation of this is that once he knows that nothing can happen, he instead controls the detective's mind in such a way that he's molding his brain in such a way that he makes the detective learn about how he controls other people. And it's sort of like he transfers his skills to the detective. And that's what makes the waitress at the end of the scene get the knife. And maybe Mamiya's subconscious is now in the detective's brain. For me, the kind of ending that this movie happens, and it's not something that they try to explain or anything. Like the cut where the waitress comes into the frame holding the knife, it happens like for half a second. You have to actually see, okay? You actually have to see very carefully as to what she's doing. Uh, and this tells you that this movie does not take the viewer for granted. It demands your attention in a lot of ways. It demands you to understand what the characters are going through in the whole movie. Like the victims, the people, the pseudo killers, Mamiya, obviously, the detective, even his wife. She has such a pivotal role to play in the movie, especially the hanging scene that we see, silent scene. Uh, so many things. Like I told you, this movie shows a lot of things that are gruesome, but it never loses its focus of what it's trying to convey, and that is the character pieces. The characters that are talked about in this movie is something which will be taught to film schools for decades to come. And the reason for this is because it never loses track of what it wants to be. And that is a horror movie, but never in the most traditional senses. So that's my recommendation for you this week. I enjoyed watching this movie. I enjoyed and analyzing the movie. I hope you enjoyed this video as well. Tell me uh, whether you liked it or not. Tell me if this is something that there are a lot of psychological thrillers that I watch, and I can't wait to talk about it. So tell me if you liked the analysis. Tell me if you like this video. Tell me if you like the movie, or what was your favorite scene in the movie? There are so many things, so many scenes in the movie that I haven't even touched upon. If you want a second part, I can do that for you as well. But for that, you have to tell me by commenting. If you don't want to comment, you can just leave a like, leave a normal like, and that'll be enough. Again, this video would have been elevated a lot more if I would get video assists. So we're still figuring out how to do copyright, how to tackle copyright. So if you have any idea, please let us know about that as well. And we'll be back next week. Great movie to talk about next week. I'm sure it's one of the most significant movies to have come out in the past, in the current century. Something that you like. I guarantee that you like a lot. So I'm Sanket, you're watching Trenches, and I'll meet you next week. Bye.